So, hi guys, once again, my name is Sansi Kolimon. I'll be presenting on Professional Services Tool Advanced Services Tool Library, sorry. All right, so before we do any sort of modifications to our environments, it's always best practice to always make sure that you make backups of your databases, right? These databases specifically would be the ones that are going to be affected. Now, it's also important um, that when you make the backups of your environments, that you ensure that the backups are not corrupted. Now, many of these tools are going to prompt you that a backup is required before allowing you to execute any sort of command that's being selected. So ensure that you don't ignore the warning messages. And these warning messages allows the user to take the necessary steps to appropriately back up their data. Most of these tools also would require that users are in logged out of the company that they're currently using before you can actually use the services tool. You are going to be prompted, however, you may receive an error message listing the number of users that are currently within the system. So just make sure that all users are logged out and then reopen the tool. Let me see if I can bring up my services tool. All right. Another thing to note is that within Microsoft Dynamics GP, there are going to be certain tools that would require users to be logged in as an SA user. Right. So when my services tools come up, you're going to see all the services tools that you are able to use to make certain modifications to your Dynamics GP environment. The tools, however, that would require SA would be the ones that are your toolkits, your customer name modifiers, your item modifiers. So basically, all the modifiers that are listed here within the professional services tool, and as well as all your combiners that are also listed here in your professional toolkit. Also, under the system tools, we have one that's called Toolkit. This tool is also required SA privileges and also the copy company services tool, right? The other tools, however, you can create a security role and assign that role to a particular user who in fact is going to require the use of the PSTL tool. It's not out of the box, it's not going to allow you to use it. It doesn't matter how role-based security is defined in GP. In order for you to use the services tool, it's going to allow you to either one, be logged in as SA, or two, create a security task and assign that task to a role, and then assign that role to a specific user. All right. So in order to create a role that's going to have the PSTL tool security in GP, you firstly need to create a security task, right? So to create a security task, it would be under your administration panel, and then it would be under security task. All right, my GP is moving a little bit sluggish today. All right, so the first thing that you're going to do, you're going to create a new task ID. So I'm going to call this PSTL1, and then you're also going to give it a task name as well as the description. So I'm just going to name mine PSTL1. Right? You're going to select the category. Right here, your list of categories, and my category is going to be listed under other for PSTL. Under the product for it, you're going to see a drop-down list, and in that drop-down list, we're going to select, for example, we're going to select Microsoft Dynamics GP, and then from the type, we're going to select, from the drop-down list, we're going to select Windows, and then from the series, from the drop-down list, we're going to select financials, right? Now let's wait for that to populate. Sorry, let me change this to technical services tools. Let's do that again. So this will be Windows, and this would be financial. Right, so these are the list of our PSTL tools under the access list, and we're going to actually mark all the selection, and we're going to save. All right, you're going to want to repeat these steps if it is you have multiple windows reports that you need to use PSTL tool for. You're going to want to use it under the financials, the sales, the purchasing, your inventory, payroll, etc. Right now I have it set up for financial. Now, secondly, what we're going to do, we are going to go back and make sure that we're able to pull up our PSTL task, right? This is the one that I've created. And you can also use it under the technical services listing. You could also use it under the series, which is project, for example, and then you can select the PSTL tool library, and then you can also save that under your task, your list of tasks. Yes. All right. So once you have done that, we're going to set up the security role for this. Under the security role, we're going to create a new role ID. Our role ID is going to be called PSTL1 as well. Right, and I'm also going to call the description the same thing. So under our role ID, you're going to see our list of security task IDs. And what we want to do is display our category of other. And here you can see the task that we created recently, which is PSTL1. So I'm going to select that, and then I'm going to click Save. So now that you have your task and you have assigned your task to a specific role, all you need to do is assign the users who are going to need this role to be able to use the PSTL function. So under your user security, you're going to be able to find that particular security role that was created and then assign that role to the user. So it's just a matter of selecting a user from the lookup class, selecting company, and looking for your role, which is PSTL1, right? And just like that, they have the ability to use certain functionalities that doesn't require essay under their user profile. All right, so now that we have that, now you can go back into the PSTL tool functionality and you have the ability to make some modifications. Now, there are different ways that you can use the PSTL tool. For example, we have system tools, financial tools, purchasing, sales, payrolls. Basically, for all the modules, we have specific tools. There are tools that do require a second checkbox. So you would definitely need to ensure that this is the checkbox is enabled along with the option button in order to use the specific tool. Now, with the user update user date, this is a update verification tool. It's when activated, it actually allows you to enter a document date in the system. And what that would do, it would check to ensure that the document date that is entered is within a valid fiscal period, or it will also look to ensure that the date that you entered is not a date that the fiscal period is closed for. Right? So if the date does not fall within a valid fiscal period, a message would be displayed and you would not be allowed to continue until you enter that valid period. Also, if it falls within a date that is closed, a message is also going to be displayed and the user would have to correct the dates in order to continue. Right? So this functionality that is presented here is available for the user for payables transaction entry screens, receivables, invoice entry, sales transaction entry, inventory, cash receipts. So there's a wide range of screens in GP you are able to use the user update, the update user date functionality. Right? So just remember to activate this tool, you must mark the second checkbox next to the PSTL functionality within the PSTL tool library. All right, so another functionality we can look at is the sales order processing customer lookup. Now, what this does, so firstly, what we can see here is that in order to use the functionality, we need to have the checkbox activated. That's one, right? And in order for you to use this tool, you are also going to have an additional setup to do, which I would show you where you can set up that additional information in order for the tool to be available on the specific window. Now, this tool would be used to store specific ordering history, as well as it's going to store the last invoice date, as well as the last price that is used. So you are not only going to be able to store that history information, but it's also going to allow you to view that information right within that sales order processing entry screen, as well as the sales item detail windows, right? So in order for you to do that, you're going to activate your PSTL tool functionality. And what this tool is going to do is going to modify existing features within Dynamics GP. right? So it's going to activate that new functionality that the tool offers. Is simply by just activating it and just canceling out of the window, right? So in order to build the initial data, you firstly would need to go to Microsoft Dynamics GP, then you'll go to Tools, then you'll go to Setup, then you'll go to Sales, and then you'll go to Sales Order Processing, right? Once you open this window, you're going to choose to create an initial we're going to choose to create an initial data. So under the additional menu, you have create additional lookup data, right? I can't recall if I had this created already, but let's do it again. All right, so depending on how much information is within your system, it's going to compile that information. And once it's completed, you are set to go and view the information within your SOP windows. So for this tool, you have to be logged in as SA in order to do this step, right? You can't be logged in as a regular user, right? So the new customer item lookup window would now be available within your SOP entry and your SOP item details window. So you can go to sales, and then you can go to your sales transaction entry. And then you can go to, let's see, we have a transaction that we can use that has some information in it. So let's look at orders. Okay, we don't have anything there. Now let's see if we could work with this. So under additional, what you would see is the ability to do a historical lookup. So this historical lookup is going to drill back and check to see how many past orders you had for this customer. All right. So here you can see our customer lookup item window for Adam Park, right? And these would be all our past orders, right? So you are able to see how many have been invoiced. You're going to be able to see the document date. You're going to be able to see the unit price, right? So by highlighting any of the records, you can actually zoom back, right, into the SOP document inquiry window, and you can see the invoices that are posted, any new entries that were added to the table, to the source, and the customer item historical data. Right, so all that information here is present for you to do a drill back functionality for, which is a extremely cool feature because there may be times where you're you may be an order entry person and you're talking to a customer, and you can actually start setting up that invoice for that customer by looking at the additional information for that customer, that historical information that that customer have ordered in the past, to give you a sense of what that customer usually purchases. All right. Now let's go back to the PSTL tool library. Another functionality that we can look at is the modifier functionality. All right, so on the sales tool, we have customer name modifier. Now you would find modifier under a variety of modules. You would see the modifiers under purchasing. You would see the modifier under inventory, payroll, financial, etc. All right. So we're going to look at the customer name modifier. And with this tool, you may have a customer that may be acquired by another company. And say, for example, you may have to do a name change for that customer, for that company, sorry. So right now, you can't change the name, but you cannot change the ID in GP, right? GP is not going to allow you to change the ID just like that. So with the customer modifier, you can actually change the ID. All right. So here you're going to select the customer number or the customer ID, right? And you're going to select the item, the customer ID, sorry, that you want to change it to. So we can actually change Aaron Fit 0001 to Aaron Fit 0002 and then convert. And that's going to update the customer ID for Aaron Fits Electrical. All right. Now we're going to look at some of the combiners. The combiners, as well as the just like the modifier, you can find under the various modules: sales, inventory, purchasing, etc. So we're going to move to the purchasing and we're going to look at the modifier for vendors. Now with the vendor modifier, you can actually change the vendor name. So whereas with the customer name modifier, you can change customer ID for that customer. With the vendor name modifier, you are going to be able to change that vendor ID for that specific vendor. So whereas in the customer, you would select that customer ID, with the vendor, you do likewise and select the ID for the specific vendor. So now once you select the vendor ID, you can now make that modification and change Ace Travel 0001 to maybe Ace Travel 0002. All right, and then click convert, and that's going to update the ID within the system for that specific vendor. All right, now let's look at a modifier again, but we're going to look at for the item numbers. Now, under inventory, we have item number modifier. So say, for example, you have a growing company that you may need to revisit the numbering scheme, or you may have two items in your system that need to be combined, right? So there is an import function. So let's bring up the item number modifier. All right, so there is an import function, and it's going to allow you to create a spreadsheet. And from that spreadsheet, it's going to allow you to validate that information before converting it. So what you're going to do is create your Excel document. You're going to select your range, your numbers. If you're selecting it from here, it will be one specific number. If you are using an Excel spreadsheet, it's going to upload the range of numbers that you have listed, right? And then you are going to be able to enter the new item number that it should be. All right, so you just enter the new item number and you click convert, and it's going to change the starting item number to the new one that you have created. All right. So just remember this validate option and these import buttons are available on many of the tools that have modifier as well as combine data functionality. Right? So these buttons allow data to be imported without having to manually enter the information, and it's going to make the tools useful to change and combine many pieces of data. For example, if it says you want to change 1,000 current item numbers, or say you want to change it to 1,000 new item numbers, for example. All right. Instead of doing that one at a time, you can save time now by importing it in a 2-column spreadsheet into your modifier or your combiner tool using the PSTL. Right? A note, however, the spreadsheet needs to be saved as a text file in Microsoft Excel, which is known as the tab delimited file function. Just to ensure that the information that Dynamics GP is using is just to ensure that it's updated correctly, right? So likewise with the, as I mentioned, with the combiner, right, it's going to allow you to combine the item number with a new item number, right? And you're going to be able to convert that. So whether you do it one by one or use import functionality to do it via a spreadsheet for a range, right? It's totally up to you when using the tool. All right. Now with the toolkit functionality, right? This is one of the functionality that I did state is going to require SA credentials to be able to use it. Right, so this toolkit is going to allow you to rebuild your GL table. It's going to also allow you to recreate decks, stored procedures, and it's also going to be able to allow you to recreate tables. And you're going to be able to check the identities of those tables within Dynamics GP. So in order for you to rebuild a GL table, and it's the GL 00105 table to be exact, right? You're going to select the rebuild option on the toolkit, and then you're going to choose next, right? There are, the other option is to recreate the SQL objects. So there are several options when you're selecting recreate SQL objects. Once you click next, you're going to see the options available here on the screen. All right. So you're going to choose on this window, you're going to choose the series or table that you wish to change. So using the drop down, it can either be a third party, company series, or any of the modules, as you can see listed here as an example. So say we choose purchasing. You're going to see the table fields, the table names rather, appear in the list. So you are going to be able to select a table that you wish to use the SQL object recreation tool for. So once you choose the object that you want to create, once you choose the table and then you create the object that you want to create under this maintenance option group, you then perform selected maintenance. Now, there is a note to be made that when you are recreating tables, there is an additional checkbox, as you can see here. So these are just straightforward option buttons, but for the recreation of tables, there is an additional checkbox. And if you mark this option, the table will be recreated and the data that's within that table is going to remain intact. However, if you leave the option unmarked, the table that will be recreated, the data will be lost. So this is something to keep in mind if you're using this tool and your table has data within it. To remember, if you want to recreate the table without losing your information within it, you are going to have this option selected as well. All right? So that's something to keep in mind. All right. So we went through the combiners, we went through the modifiers, we went through the toolkit, because a lot of the functionality you're going to see here would be replicated amongst the different modules, right? So that's something to note. Another option that you can use within this tool functionality would be the SOP/PO number check option. Now, what this does, it basically verifies the customer number field for duplicates as data is being entered into the field on both the SOP entry window and the SOP customer detail entry window. All right, so that is a great functionality because there may be instances where you may enter a duplicate check number, and with this functionality, it's going to ensure that you are not going to be able to put in duplicates within that field. All right. Another tool that we can probably discuss let's see, we can discuss under, let's see. All right, so under the purchasing tool, we have the 1099 modifier. So just a synopsis of what this tool does. So it is a modifier tool. So we know the basics of what a modifier tool does. But however, the 1099 modifier tool is going to update the 1090 amount of vendors who are not set up as a 1099 vendor for the year or a portion of the year. So essentially, it's going to modify records that are already paid that should be 1099 records for the specific calendar year that you select, right? I don't have any years currently set up, right? So if you have any work or open records, for example, that haven't been paid, but were entered and posted while a vendor was not set up as a 1099 vendor, those records will not be changed. So you would need to execute this tool the next year prior to printing your 1099 reports, just to be sure that the work and open records that were paid in the new year gets updated. All right, so that is something to keep in mind. All right. We have a functionality under the miscellaneous tool, and we can take a look at this. This is called decimal place tool. Now, when the decimal place tool is activated, both your payables management checks and your payroll checks would have the check amount in words truncated to 2 decimals. Right? So it can alter the amount of the check. So basically this tool, once selected, so this tool is just activated and closed. right? There's no next for this tool. You select it, you close the window, it's going to be available for you, right? So this tool would be used if the currencies in Microsoft Dynamics GP would change to more than 2 decimals. So in this situation, the checks would print more than 2 decimals, which can alter the amount of that check. So the decimal place tool is going to adjust the check amount in words to that 2 decimal places. All right. Just to know that it's only going to change the check amount in words portion of the check. The actual amount on the check, to match the check amount in words, you must use report writer in order to modify and make that currency change to those fields. The company copy functionality. Right, for this one, there's no checkbox, so we can use the next functionality on this window. And this tool is going to allow us to not only set up, but also report option information from one company. And it's going to allow us to copy it to another company within Dynamics GP. So you can choose the modules for the information that you want to be copied from the source company, right? And then you can choose the company that you would like it to be copied to. In my instance, I only have Fabricam, all right? But if you did have more than one company, that would be listed here, and you would select it. All right, it's telling me that my company destination, my source company and my destination company cannot be the same, right? But if you had multiple companies, you are able to copy information from the source to the destination, right? This is another tool that I mentioned would require SA privileges in order for you to use it. All right, now before using this tool, it is important that you do a backup of your SQL database, all right, for the specific companies that you are using, because the copy function would be irreversible without a backup. So if you copy data and it was a mistake, you copy the wrong information, etc., and you don't have a backup, well, you you basically can't reverse what you did. All right. Now, when the copy process is run, the setup tables and the report option tables in the module that is selected will be deleted for the destination company. So it's going to replace whatever is in that destination company with the new functionality that you have copied over. If you manually added setup or report information, however, for that module in the destination company and you do not want the information to be deleted, you can use the company copy tool to copy data for that module. All right. So here you can see you would select your source company, you would select your destination company, right? And you can copy whether it's setup data, report options data, or both, right? You must mark if you want to select to copy data or report options, that must be selected, right? When the report or data options are selected, however, financials must be marked just due to the fact that the account index dependencies with the other modules. So the following dependencies would exist on what modules you are choosing to copy. So if you're using manufacturing, for example, you would have to also mark inventory. If you are using the project accounting module, for example, receivables and payroll must also be marked. So there are some dependencies depending on the company, the module that you're going to be using in the company copy functionality. Now, once you have selected all your information within this window, you click the process button, which is located up here, and you're going to be able to begin processing. You would see a processing status message that would be displayed on the screen, and the processing time would depend on the amount of data that's within the modules that you select. All right, once it is finished, you are going to be indicated that your processing has been completed. And then you can go and verify into the new company that the information that you have copied over from your modules are actually there, right? And like I said, it's going to be dependent if we choose information or report options to be copied over. All right, so those are the functionalities that I've touched within the PSTL tool library. I hope that the functionality can be put to use with whatever challenges that you may currently be experiencing. The professional services tool library is there to allow you to manipulate your information in a safe way. Also, with the fact that you should always have a backup before using the tool in the event that something does go wrong. I would like to thank you guys for joining us today. And I would like to also thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. If you do have any questions, you can post them within the chat. If not, you can also send your questions to operations@optimus.guru, and we are going to be able to get back to you with whatever answers are required for the questions that you ask. So once again, thank you and take care.